Hello, this is Tamara, and I'm the host of the Movies Kill Plants podcast, where we talk about movies, film reviews, award season, and tips for caring for houseplants. On this episode, we look back at the month of March and some of the first time looks at movies like Project Hail Mary, Undertone, and The Bride. Also, we take a look at early spring plant chores, from potting up propagations to the top 5 chores that you should do as the season gets started. And without further ado, let's get started with the episode. Okay, for this week's plan of the episode, we have a few plant chores that I need to do for early spring. 2 of which I like to do is get my DIY potting mix done, and as well as getting some cuttings potted up and ready to go, since this is the approach of growing season. Here in Colorado, March is usually one of the snowiest months of the year. Except this year, the weather has been super warm and has not been its typical Colorado self. So I can get some of this stuff done a bit earlier than usual. I should say. So right now what you see before you is my DIY potting mix, my water propagation of a Philodendron silver sword, which I had profiled on the last episode when I was doing water propagations. This is my variegated string of hearts, which will have a different style of propagation for. Some chopsticks to offer support for the Philodendron, 2 decorative bowls, some nursery pots, and this lovely mat that will catch up all the dirt and stuff that might spill as we're getting this done. Just a couple of things I want to mention about my DIY potting mix is, if you're just a basic hobbyist to houseplants, you don't necessarily have to make your own potting mix. If you want to get a nice bag of indoor potting mix, like a Miracle Grow or something like that, it's absolutely fine. I just like having my own. It helps me save money sometimes, and it's easier for you to have like a big plastic box of potting soil all ready to go, and knowing that I already have it, and it lasts me for about 2 or 3 years, instead of being worried that I will run out of it when I start doing my spring chores. So with my homemade mix, I have 2 parts indoor potting soil. So I have my Miracle Grow in there. I have 2 parts coco coir, which you can buy at any hardware, garden center store, or you can order it on Amazon. I have 1 part perlite, which is a nice medium for adding, letting your plants breathe while in the soil, and I have 1 part of orchid bark. It's a nice organic addition to the soil that also helps retain moisture and sort of more of a natural feel, much like the coco coir will do for adding its onto there. The good thing about using like a commercial mix, it already most of it already has fertilizer in it, so you don't have to really worry about adding like a new fertilizer. Like if you do like stick fertilizers or liquid fertilizers, which are the ones I like to use, you don't have to really worry about using those for like the first 3 months that you have your plant potted up. And like, since 3 months from now is June, it's a really good time then to start a regular fertilizer routine as you're doing your waterings and things like that. but this mix is my typical universal mix. So I'll use this on my tropical plants, my aeroids, things like besides philodendron. I'll use this on like my monsteras, my spider plants, and any other tropical plant that I have. I also make a another mix that's for my succulents and cacti, which is about I would say 2 parts regular potting soil. I have charcoal, horticultural sand, and perlite. So it doesn't have like the moisturizing or moisture-rich components like the cocoa coir or the orchid bark. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pot up this philodendron. And the philodendron silver sword has like a blue, sort of a blue teal and silver coloring to it. It's pretty light, and you don't have to put it in bright light. So it really just has like that blue steel type of color onto its leaves. So with this guy, have these nice, pretty healthy. We'll probably trim off that rot there before I put this in the, I pot this up. But yeah, I've had this in water since December, and I've been feeding it plant enzymes and filtered water throughout the whole time. So I'm just gonna cut that little bit off. You don't really want to introduce root rot when you're potting it up. So these are sterilized scissors that I'm using, and so yeah, we got that cut off. So I'm going to put this back in the water real quick as I fill up this nursery pot that I'm going to put it in. So this is about a 4-inch, yeah, this is a 4-inch nursery pot. So I'm just going to I'm going to start with this lovely decorative pot. It's a regular terracotta pot that I painted. And the reason why I'm not going to put the soil directly into this terracotta pot is that terracotta as a material is very absorbent, so it wicks away a lot of the moisture very quickly. And this is a plant that requires a lot of moisture. So I mean, unless you want to like water it every 12 hours, which I suggest you never do, you would go ahead and just put the pot, the soil in like this. But I would prefer it to be lined with a regular nursery pot like this. So I'm gonna go ahead and stick that in there, and I'm gonna fill about halfway through with my potting mix. See, taking out a little bit too much, putting a little bit too much. I'm going to put some back. And with nursery pots, you can find, like this one I got for free from a local boutique that was closing up shop. They had tons of these left over. You can probably go to your nearest nursery center, and they may have some free ones for you if you need more. Or always, if you're going to repot, if you're going to repot a plant that you bought, and you take out a nursery pot and put it in decorative or something like that, it's a good idea to have these saved around in case you have some lovely cuttings. Now with this guy, with philodendrons, you have some that are climbers, some that are crawlers. It's best when you're first starting out with these to already have the support in hand, so it doesn't disturb the roots as it's growing. So I have these chopsticks that I bought from Dollar Tree, and these are going to provide some of this early support. So now I'm going to take this guy out, and build like a little well here so I can protect. I can get these roots in there. Now, the way that this guy is cut, I'm sorry, bringing it back out. You have like this end here to the stem. Some people just like to cover, make sure they cover it with this still hanging out, but covering the roots. So I'm going to actually do that as well. Just going to put this here. See what's the best side that I have, like all these like growth areas, these growth points that I could stick to staying on to the chopsticks, so it can climb up at least this support. And as it gets bigger, I might add more, like just tape or tie together some more chopsticks to make this taller. Or if I find that it's getting pretty root bound, where you have the root sticking out of the pot, I will add every pot I'll add a taller support to do so. So now I'm going to backfill our little friend here. Now there are people who like to put these on, as far as support, who like to use like moss poles, which is where you put sphagnum moss into a like tight tube or some sort of setup, and those are fine and all, but it just takes up a little bit more effort than I would like to do. So I prefer doing like a trellis, or in this case chopsticks. Sometimes you can use bamboo skewers, which are very inexpensive. Like, well, these were only $1.25 at Dollar Tree for me, and I got a set of 4. So I have this pair and another that I can use for a future potting. This is about as tall, as much soil as I'm going to have. I'm going to have that like just right up to the brim here. And while I got it, I'm going to shake the pot so that the soil hits all the air pockets that are in there, because some of those air pockets can spell trouble for your roots, and we don't want that. So I'm going to set this aside, because the last steps I need to take with this is to need to tie it here so that it can stand tall and get supported from the chopsticks, and as well as I need to drench this with water, because that will, especially when you have a water propagation like this, you need to keep it keep sort of the moisture still going, because the roots are so used to living in like 100% water, that when you put it into soil, it can have a shock, and that could kill the plant. So we don't want that. We spent way too much time trying to grow really, really nice roots with this guy. We don't want to lose it within the first 2 weeks in soil. So I'm going to put this aside. And now the philodendron, like after it's grown some roots, you've watered it, you pretty much kept the soil moist for a good while. It'll just need to be like put it on a water schedule for about once a week, or until more than half of the soil is dry. Also, it thrives in bright indirect light. Direct sunlight is not very good for this particular plant, especially with the lighter colored leaves. And hopefully we can get a really good update pretty in a few weeks of how it's doing. All right, and now here we have a variegated string of hearts. The string of hearts are very much like a succulent. They do not like a lot of water. So I water this guy maybe about every 2 to 3 weeks, depending on the season. As it gets warmer, it will probably get down to 2 weeks. This one I have tried doing water propagation. I have also attempted it with just doing a straight perlite propagation, and with that I just had like the white little bits. I'll just demonstrate here. The white little bits in the soil mix, I just had only this, and they're pretty lightweight here too, and I would propagate it that way, but I have not been very successful with it. And with this one in particular, I have tried adding leaves directly back into the pot itself, and have not had success with it. So this is attempt number 4 for propagation for me. So I'm not giving up. I will show you the basis of how to cut this plant so that you can get a propagation off of it. So now I'm going to clear off these scissors again. Get these sanitizer. We'll sanitize now, and I will make some cutting off of this plant. As you can see, it's really starting here where the root's down, and then it branches off and gets these nice long stems, or vines I should say. And each one of these are a node, so you can actually just make a cutting in between the leaves here, like so. See if I get a good angle. But yeah, these are a bit curly, so I'll need to do some watering right after this. So again, where you see the space, you have a leaf on each side. You cut right in between here, so you get these little like bow tie shaped things. Well, they're mostly called butterfly, and that's actually the method in which they the propagation is called. And like most succulents too, a string of hearts do not need a lot of moisture when they're mature. So you don't have to really worry about humidity. They also have really nice flowers. I saw some flowering ones in the shop a few weeks ago, and like the blooms are upside down. They sort of look like this, but like this off of the vine. It's really pretty. And like this guy, I'm going to keep it in a small nursery pot. So I have one that's like this. And I'm going to also use my universal mix here, because as we're doing this propagation, this is like really the only time that we're focusing on moisture with this plant. And since this is my 4th attempt, I'm hoping I'm successful with it. I'm going to try with this mix. Get that going. And I'm sort of looking through my DIY mix here and trying to get some with the most like perlite in there. And this one we're going to fill up to the top because I'll show you how get this up to the top, because I'll show you how we're going to propagate this. As I mentioned, this is called the butterfly effect. So first I'm going to go ahead and shake this, get rid of the air pockets so that the soil can settle. Sorry about that, we had a little bit of a pause in the programming. It's also called having very old equipment that's not equipped for podcasting when it was invented. So we're going back to showing you how full the pot is with all the potting soil that we made, and we're going back to looking at our cuttings that we've made with the propagation cuts for our variegated string of hearts. So right now I've got one cut here, and I'll bring it up a little bit closer. We have one cut here, and we're going to just stick that right into the soil. And fanning out those leaves. I have about 5 cuts here. I'm going to do that in this small pot to increase the odds that one of these is going to root and make a really nice vine for us. Great. Got this one. And I'll do this way. Oopsie. A better chance at life, so we've got to make sure that we get the let's see, saw that broke off, so I'll get that in this way. And this little baby one here. I'm sorry if my hands are blocking all the action here, but I will bring this all up and get a look. So now you're probably understanding why it's called the butterfly method. These are the leaves and how we have them planted in here. Now your results may vary. You may have ones that have been well watered before this got started, so it will look a bit different. After this, this guy and our philodendron will get a nice good drowning to get all that water in so that its roots can start forming even better. And hopefully in about 2 months we'll see some nice strong plants. But that will do it for this segment of the plants of the episode. For the month of March, I did 10 first viewings, 5 of which were in the theater. Among the ones that I saw were Blue Moon, the Oscar-nominated role for Ethan Hawke as lyricist Lorenz Hart. This Richard Linklater film I was not particularly a big fan of. It very much was performed like a play. But Ethan Hawke's performance as a much shorter guy than he is in real life was not too bad, but the film itself was a disaster to me. Another one that I saw was The Roses, the 2025 film starring Olivia Colman and Benedict Cumberbatch, which I only gave a half a star. I honestly thought that it was a movie where they just wanted British actors to recite biting lines for 2 hours. It was just not very funny or interesting or believable. Like, I mean, at least with Cumberbatch and Coleman, you know you were seeing really good actors, but when there is nothing for them to hold on to, especially as weak of a script as this one for the roses. It was just too much to bear. So that's why I only gave it a half a star. And also I watched the latest Disney Pixar release, Hoppers, about a older teenage girl who takes on the body of a beaver to restore a glade where she and her grandmother would spend time together. And it's trying to stop development of a bypass out of Beaverton, Oregon. I gave this one 3.5 stars. It seems to be continuing this newfound tradition with Pixar, at least in the last 5 years, where all girls are hot-headed and angry and will do whatever they want. And the theme is sort of to find a way to channel that anger into something productive, which is getting a bit old now, because you've had that with Turning Red, you had that with Inside Out, and gosh, is there another? No, I think of maybe, well, you had Inside Out and Inside Out 2, then this Turning Red, and now this one. So you have 4 movies that have this sort of same storyline of girls trying to find their strength and trying to find a way to calm down their anger and use it for more productive reasons. I'm hoping that Pixar can pick a different direction, but I really did like the different parts of the sort of the animal kingdom set up in this ecosystem, with like the marsh, the pond, and things like that, as well as how technology can be can fool anyone, that as well as being used for good and for evil. Thought that was a nice touch, but yeah, I could use this a change from having these hot-headed girls leading these movies. So I'm going to go into detail about 4 of the movies I saw this month, which were really stood out as far as production values, plot, you name it, it had it. And I'm going to first start with The Bride, the Maggie Gyllenhaal directed film starring Jessie Buckley, Christian Bale, and Penelope Cruz and Peter Skarsgård. In this film, it's a more of a feminist take on The Bride of Frankenstein, which was a sequel created for the movie Frankenstein back in the day. Here, Maggie Gyllenhaal takes on the bride, who is like a fully realized woman who had, before she is reanimated, she is sort of like a mob mall who knows a lot about the business, and who unfortunately dies, but becomes the muse for Frankenstein, who is Christian Bale. Jessica Buckley plays both the girl who is the victim of this death, and the resurrected, who is brought back to life by Annette Bening's character. It takes place like in the 1930s to the 50s, but a lot of it has elements of the old Hollywood golden era. So you see a lot of tip to the hat references to old Frankenstein movies, from the original Universal big screeners to even Mel Brooks's Young Frankenstein, which there are several references that made me giggle about it. Penelope Cruz plays a rising detective who is trying to fight the male-dominant system of the police department. The bride here is trying to figure out what type of person she is, what her name is, for example, how did she end up with Frankenstein, and through this path of discovery, she finds she finds a following. More people are supporting her in her path of destruction that goes on throughout the film. I rather liked the movie, mostly because I liked the sort of the parody it was going for with the older movies. I mean, I've seen Young Frankenstein maybe 20 times in my lifetime. I usually see it once a year. There are so many things that I saw in Maggie Gyllenhaal's film that I have seen in the Mel Brooks one. The Putting on a Ritz gets a humongous production treatment here, which if you're a big fan of the Mel Brooks version, you may think that that musical number may be a little bit too much, but I thought it was entertaining. But the biggest weakness was the actual plot that is in the film, which is with the bride trying to find her identity, who she is, how she wants to be portrayed and thought of in this new world as she is being reanimated as this new creature. Is she really only a bride? Is she a feminist icon? Is she a woman who only cares about herself and making sure that she is well protected? And that's the thing, the plot really doesn't know itself where she is. So I actually gave it a 3.5 stars out of 5. That just worked for me, and I really liked just the production values and how much fun I had watching it. My second movie is Surat, which was one of the nominated films for Best International Film out of Spain. It features a father and son who go through the deserts of Morocco to look for the man's daughter, the kid's sister, who has hopped along different raves going on in the desert. He sort of forms this band of other ravers who help him try to find her, as they are also trying to find the nearest wave. In the background is a unsettling feeling as you're seeing army and military officials try to round up people to evacuate the area, while our main characters are going the opposite direction and trying to find the girl and another dance festival for them to attend. Now, I have not seen a movie quite like this as far as sound. It's like no wonder it got nominated for Best Sound for the Oscars, because there was just so many different elements that the sound was a character itself. Like at the very beginning, you're treated to this opening scene where it's just all these people, all these bodies dancing around to this heartbeat that's going on with the techno music for this for the rave. And I just remember being in this crowded movie theater, and my heart was pumping along with the music. And it's like, oh man, this is really setting you up, that atmospheric feeling of seeing something on the big screen and hearing it in full volume, and just being like, yeah, this is where I want to be. I'm feeling what the ravers are feeling. And just throughout the film, there's this really high suspense as our travelers are going through this unmarked terrain, increasing danger, as well as if they will make it to their next destination. I'm not going to speak more about it, because there's so many elements that are so surprising, so like just rocked me out of my seat, that I think viewers should have that privilege to know about, to see it for themselves. For that, I gave it 5 stars. I was just blown away by the subject matter and like the acting and just the plethora of unexpected moments that for many of us was just been missing from movies. So that is Sarat from Spain. All right, and the next film I'm going to go to is from A24, called Undertone. It is on a young woman who lives with her mother and takes care of her as her mother is entering hospice. But at the same time, the young woman Evie is a host of a podcast, also shares its name with the movie Undertone, in which she and her partner either debunk like urban legends or like scary sounds, where her partner is the one that mostly believes the stories are true, and she is the one, Evie is the one who is looking to debunk these scares. In one podcast that they're looking into, they hear a sound of a couple who's recorded themselves sleeping. It's mostly the wife that the husband is worried about, and each night, along with these 10 recordings that has been sent to the podcast, become more alarming and more frightening. As the movie unfolds, Evie is being haunted by sort of all these like Catholic icons, Catholic superstitions, as well as the sounds from these recordings. Now, it was nice how it was presented. It's not a gory film by all means, so it's not like in the realm of Saw. It's more a little bit more suspense instead, and atmospheric, as I described Sarat. But unlike Sarat, a lot of like the visual choices that are made and the sound choices here are not effective. There are many times you will find yourself in a scene where you have like half of the set is blackened out or in the shadows, and then you see like bright light or highlights as Evie is recording or as she is listening to these sound files, and you're looking to see if there is something different, something will do a jump scare, or if there's something beyond the shadow. And that was a humongous distraction throughout the film. The later third of the movie just wraps itself up very quickly, and I felt like I didn't have enough time to consume what I had seen the other 2/3 and how this conclusion was made. So for Undertone, I gave that 2 stars. And the last one I'm going to quickly review is Project Hail Mary, starring Ryan Gosling as an astronaut who wakes up on a spaceship not knowing who he is, where he is, or what his mission is. But as we watch the film, we learn that he has been sent to space as like a biologist, scientist who is now working in like a high school or at least a grade school as a teacher, is sent out to see what is killing the sun. Apparently there was an organism that's killing the sun that can mean grave danger for the earth. Once he sort of gets his mind back after being in a coma on the ship, he makes a friend, another, it's not a celestial being or an extraterrestrial, but not a human, more of what would be an alien to him, a sort of stone-like creature that he calls Rocky. And for Rocky, on his home planet, they're facing the same danger as those on Earth, and they travel together to a far-off planet that is surviving this pending doom that the stars are experiencing elsewhere. This is from the Andy Weir, who wrote The Martian, which was also made into a film starring Matt Damon and a slew of other actors. With Project Hail Mary, it's along the same lines. Get a very likable actor who is going to be alone and sort of abandoned in space, and have him carry the film. What's different is that I prefer Ryan Gosling over Matt Damon. I'm not gonna lie, I think that Gosling has better acting skills here, and it sort of balances drama, comedy, deadpan all together, especially with his rapport with the alien Rocky. That is one thing that's a little bit different from other sci-fi movies. I happen to like workplace sci-fi, which is what I consider this to be. But it also brings a lot of elements of 2001: A Space Odyssey, Contact, even in Gosling's case, Half Nelson, and like a little bit of First Man, the last time he was in space on film. I mean, it was very charming, but after also looking at a lot of movies that were really deep or looking for more meaning, this film is very much on the surface, and kind of reminded me of like those big sci-fi movies from the 80s and 90s that you see Spielberg doing that didn't have much of a deeper skin to it, but it was entertaining. Like, it was a good time at the movies, especially with the visual effects that also reminded me of 2001, and like the sound, and being at like 2.5 hours long, it did feel a little long, especially when you got to what you thought was the end and it wasn't. And you also had, like, brief cameos, like Sandra Hüller had a really sort of villanesque turn here, but she was a little bit one-dimensional, and also you had blink and you missed cameos from some of your favorite TV folks. But I gave that one also 3.5 stars. I really just like the visuals and the simplicity, but I would have also enjoyed a much deeper film. So that will do it for this episode of Movies Kill Plants. I'm your host, Tamara. Thank you for joining us through this venture of plants and movie news. And until next time, join us again. Bye.